welcome to Now You're Playing with Podcast Episode 0. This is our test run, so we've had a couple mishaps along the way, and hopefully we can get this down right this time. And the topic of today's show is going to be Hexadecathlon 2011. I had a gaming tournament in my basement a few weeks ago with some friends. Nothing super serious, but it was a chance for me to share my collection with my friends, most of whom aren't serious collectors or players. Most people, about my age, a little younger, grew up with Atari and Nintendo and kind of use it as an excuse to come over, hang out, and play some of the old games that they haven't played in a long time. I'm Chris.
And I'm Tatton.
Tatton was the winner of the event and also my co-host, and next year, because he won, he will be the co-organizer and won't be eligible for prizes. Your general impressions of how it went?
Honestly, I thought it was fantastic. For the very first one that you've put on, everything just seemed like it went perfectly smooth. Definitely great idea of yours to let all the people who were competing to pick some of the games. I thought that went out really well. They picked some really good stuff. There were no hiccups in the setup. Seeing all the TVs all the way across, the bottom of the basement was really cool. The point system was absolutely fantastic. I think that was probably the thing that I can't give you enough credit for. I thought you came up with a fantastic system for the scoring. I thought it was great.
Yeah, my wife complained it went a little long. It didn't. I mean, I planned for it to go from noon to 8. It ended about 9.
It's a decathlon. It's supposed to run long.
Yeah, it's supposed to run a little long. I think it went great. I got some tweaks already for next year. The breakdown of how it went was there were 16 total games, 10 single-player games, and 6 multiplayer March Madness-style tournaments. The winner of each game got 100 points, and on the single-player games, you got points based on your percentage of the high score. And on the multiplayer games, your place was an average. It's convoluted spreadsheet formula, but basically, second place got 83 points because the second place averages on the single-player games are 83 points. So we could go down the list, and I just talk to games, go through our thoughts on all the 16 games we played, and then we'll have a segment where we bring in our wives who are also participated, and I get their view on it because they're not your wife's a hardcore collector, and she's in the scene, but she's not a player per se. There's not a polite way of putting it. She's into the culture and the scene. And
if it were competition on like RPG levels, she'd be way up there. But for the type of games that were in there,
or finding a goddamn beautiful shiny Atari and making it even shinier and giving it to friends and that sort of thing, she's totally awesome. But we'll bring them in later and discuss these kind of the same topics. But game number 00 was H.E.R.O for the Atari 2600. That was suggested by Brad. He grew up playing that game on a Commodore 64, so he was used to playing it with a keyboard rather than a joystick. But he still did pretty well. He scored second place. We used Variation 2, which meant game level 5. And didn't really have any ringers in the game. I was first place with 28,915, but that's hardly a runaway score. I think I got to maybe stage 9 or 10. The goal was to keep the game lengths short so that everybody could get a chance to play everything. How did you think about H.E.R.O?
Honestly, I thought it was great. It was a great selection for the system. It definitely, it looked great. It played really well, and it was one of those ones that you didn't have to have a lot of knowledge going into it. Everyone could just, pick it up, get the basic concept, and run with it and play. It was a lot of fun. It
took a little bit of explaining to people about the dynamite and stuff that hadn't seen it before, and it's a little one of the more obscure later classics. Anything released in 1984 or later, fewer people played because that was after the crash. But it was a very good game, and it was a nice pick and a nice 2600 entry.
Well, you said that Brad got second. What score did he run away with?
26,855, so he got 93 points. So pretty much a neck-and-neck race there.
Nice.
You were third with 14,465, so you only got 50 points.
Which is funny because that was up by like 10,000 points because I couldn't figure out what to do. I think Brad was the one who ended up helping me out.
Yeah. Game 01 was Pac-Man for the Atari XEGS. Pac-Man was suggested by Brad's wife, Tori, and the fortunate thing about Pac-Man was I could kind of fill in whatever version I wanted of Pac-Man based on what was left from other picks. So I chose the Atari XEGS, but that happens to be one of my favorite ports of Pac-Man. Ports meaning built from scratch, just based off of somebody playing the arcade machine. They didn't take any code from the arcade machine. Silly little things I like about this port. It elongates the screen. It elongates the play field to fit the 4:3 wide, not widescreen, but a horizontal style screen rather than a vertical arcade screen. A lot of your Pac-Man ports, like on the NES, will put up the actual playfield ratio, and then leave a bar on the left or right hand side to put the score and everything. This version stretched out the playfield, so it kind of looks weird, but it still plays really well, and it takes up the full screen, so it has a good, unique look. And then the other little silly thing I like about it is the sound effect the game makes when you eat a ghost. It's this fantastic, abrasive, loud, aggressive, metallic sound when you eat a ghost.
Actually, this is a sound clip of it right here.
Awesome. I love it. It's better than the arcade version. Like that little thing is better than the arcade version. We did get a complaint about the joystick. We use a standard Atari 2600 joystick. The stick I used for that one was a stick I rescued from a thrift store, and it worked when I put it in the morning, when I play tested it the previous night. But through the day, it got worn down a little more than the other stick we used for H.E.R.O, and it kind of got that clicky sound going, when you use a 2600 joystick too aggressively. That happens with 2600 sticks in general, and I wasn't going to use my good set for a public competition like this one with a bunch of people playing it all day. We start on the lime level, which I chose because it was a nice. It's difficult on the lime level to score a lot of points eating ghosts because the ghosts don't stay blue very long. And it's also difficult to gain a lot of points eating fruit because the fruit's only worth 1,000 points at that point. Had I started on the key level, then, one person getting one key, that's 5,000 points. That's quite a big jump on points. And I think the scores reflect that. Tatton ended up winning that game. You got a score of 37,430. And I think you got to the key levels doing that, but I don't think anybody else got to the key levels.
Yeah, I can't remember. I definitely got to the first one. Might have got to the second one.
A lot of the people got, 10,000, 15,000. So you got some good scores there. Probably got a little higher than I'd hoped, but again, nobody ran away with it. Nobody was on the machine playing it for half an hour or longer and getting, hundreds of thousands of points.
Well, I think the other nice thing, too, about the version that you picked was that, obviously almost everyone's played Pac-Man before at some point in their life, and, a lot of people, who enjoy games have obviously played it a lot, but the version that you picked, definitely didn't feel like the arcade version, didn't feel traditional. To me, it seemed like the ghosts, like the logic was off a little bit, and it felt like a new experience. Like all the gameplay mechanics were there, but it was different enough that it didn't feel familiar. And I think that probably helped to kind of even some of the scores out too. That might have been one of the reasons why there wasn't like a good ringer in that one.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that's my favorite classic era port of Pac-Man. I mean, they did better jobs later on, on like the NES and the PlayStation, and then your modern adaptations of the arcade game. But back in the day, you had the 2600 version, which blew, and the television version was halfway decent. There's a Commodore version, a VIC-20 version, but I think the Atari XEGS the Atari 8-bit, I guess that's the official name of it, we played on an XEGS. I'm really proud of that one, and I plan on using the XEGS next year, but we'll get into that subject later on. Game 02, Fortress of Narzod for the Vectrex. I had to play a Vectrex game. Very few people have played a Vectrex or even seen one, and getting it in front of people was a goal of mine when I came up with the idea of the tournament. It's a straight up, pretty much move, shooter, up, down, left, right, one button to fire. The hook of this game is you play in a canyon with several strange angles, and your shots can bounce off of those walls. So if you fire a lot of bullets, you almost end up hurting yourself because a lot of that shrapnel that you fire will end up bouncing back to you. And it's a pretty hard game, but it's not a game that overwhelms you like a bullet hell style game. So nobody really ran away with this one. Seth ended up winning it with a score of 58-10. We used game variation 1 because we didn't really have to move that around. You ended up getting a score of 54-50, so you're right up there. But nobody got to the boss, which is at level 4. So again, nobody ran away with it, which was one of my goals when picking out the games and the variations.
I think a couple of us got close because we got almost to the end where the birds that were flying around started firing bullets, and as soon as we got there, it was just the handful of us that got to that point just drained all of our lives. We were done.
The birds fired bullets later on. Jesus Christ! It's brutal.
Yeah, no joke. There were 3 of them, and all 3 of them were firing bullets. And
but mind you, that's brutal, but that's still not bullet hell. I want to get that point across. It's not like some insane Japanese shooter where there's billions of bullets on the screen, but then an actual pattern that you can escape the bullets if you memorize it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the challenge with this is the bullets were very deliberate.
Yeah.
And getting away from all of them, plus having to take into account your shrapnel coming back at you as you try to fire on those guys was a great challenge. Honestly, I thought this was a really good pick that you had because it's definitely. It's easy to figure out. It's easy to pick up really quick, but it's not going to be familiar for a lot of people. And I think it was a nice, fun, fresh experience for the people who went, who were the collectors and people who really knew games. It was a good one for them to play. And then for a lot of the other folks who kind of just showed up, some of the people who came with somebody else and decided to play, I think it was a good pick for them too. It seemed like it was fun all around. I heard lots of good things about it.
Yeah. There's definitely bringing back the Vectrex next year. I wanted to pick a game that was unique to the Vectrex. I didn't want to choose Berserk or Frogger or Pole Position. I didn't want to do something that's, oh, look, here's a game in vector graphics. I don't think the Vectrex shines in that. I think they shine in the actual games that were made for vector graphics. So I got a few ideas for next year, but again, we can go about that later in the show. Game number 03 is Food Fight for the Atari 7800. This game was suggested by Steve.
I think this was my personal favorite of all of them.
Really? Yeah, well, you won this one too, of course. The one drawback with Food Fight's one of those games that would be very susceptible to ringers. I've seen people that could play up to level 100 and beyond. So I capped the levels at level 16. And I had the difficulty at advanced, but I had a hard time telling the difference between advanced and beginner and expert or intermediate. I guess the ice cream cone melts a little faster, but I didn't really notice any speed difference with your chef and not your chef, the enemy chefs and your character between any of the difficulty settings. But with the stages 1 through 16, you got a score of 186,000. Steve, who had suggested the game, got 150,000. He was second place.
The stage cap really put a big challenge on this one because it was hard to figure out going into it. What's the best way to rack up scores in this? Is it go after chefs and sacrifice all of your fruit and get more of them and get ice cream cone right before it melts, or go for the ice cream cone as quick as you can and just rack up the points from that and then from the fruit that was left. It was hard to find the median in that to get a good score by level 16.
Well, whatever you did it right. You beat everybody, of course. But I don't think there was really anybody there that was point pressing or played it so much that they were point pressing. But I guess, you got the watermelon stages where you could, take as many chefs as you can while, waiting for the cone to melt and get the cone at the very last second. But again, a really enjoyable title. No complaints about it. We used one of the Atari 7800 joypads with it. So it's more like the traditional NES style pad that more people are familiar with than a terrible Pro Line controllers.
And that was a great decision on your part.
Yeah.
I think that made it a more comfortable experience for people to walk into. Being closer to the NES, having the D-pad on there, not having the buttons on the side, that probably made it easier.
Yeah, I mean it's not the best D-pad or even controller, but it is a way better than the Pro Line sticks. Let's see here. The next game was one of my choices, along with Fortress of Narzod. The 1990 Nintendo World Championship. I have a reproduction of this. There's no way it's against my morals to spend several hundred or thousands of dollars on a cartridge. Coincidentally, I was in the Cincinnati stop of the Nintendo World Championships and made it to the semifinals. It really wasn't that much of an accomplishment. You only need about a couple 100,000 to get to the semifinals. And as a result, since I was the only one who had this game going in, I ran away with it. I got a score of 952,000. not a personal best or anything, but the next highest score was Tatton with 395,000. So I really didn't need to, rub it in anybody's face. It's bad enough with my one run through it.
Yeah, that was nuts. And honestly, I think that score that I had was actually my lifetime personal best.
Yeah. Were you in it back in the day? Or they didn't stop in Columbus, did they? So
not that I know of, and I might have been a little young for it too. How old were you when you did it?
I was a freshman in high school.
Okay, yeah, no, I would have been old enough, but no, I did the Blockbuster one when that one came around, but not the Nintendo World Championship.
You got Mario Brothers, which everybody's known and played, but getting 50 coins is kind of counterintuitive. Most people play to get past the level. They don't really play for points or play to get coins or any specific goal like that.
And I think that was part of the challenge with this one for everybody, is everybody seemed like they were playing Mario Brothers like they normally would,
right?
Not necessarily running for all the coins.
Right. And then you got Rad Racer, which I don't like Rad Racer. I think it's a lame, not terrible, but it's a knockoff game. Let's just say that. It's not the worst game of all time, but it's definitely overrated as an NES classic. I mean, I know it's a black box game, but, Square back in the day, they did nothing but knockoffs. I mean, you had Rad Racer, which is an Outrun knockoff. You had 3D World Runner, which was a Space Harrier knockoff. Then you had Final Fantasy, which was a Dragon Quest knockoff, but Final Fantasy was well enough done that it, kept the company alive, and then they exploded from there and became, the Squaresoft juggernaut in the 90s. But, that's my tangent of the night. Rad Racer, though, I'm kind of surprised that was included. I would think maybe RC Prime would have been a better second leg for them, but
would have loved RC Pro-Am in that.
Yeah, that was a cooler game. I mean, and although I don't know, but that was 20 some years ago. And then the third leg of Tetris, which is awesome. That was a fantastic choice. And anybody who's good at the Nintendo World Championship Kart, that's where you get all the meat. They take your Tetris score multiplied by 25, so you get about 100,000 points from your Mario and your Rad Racer run, and then that's just saving up time for the Tetris run, and that's where you get all your points. Kind of a few people are disappointed that they didn't get enough time to play Tetris. Like Martha, she's not a hardcore gamer, obviously, just was in it because her boyfriend was in it, and she liked to play the puzzle games, and she wished she had more time playing Tetris. She finally got the Tetris, and she only got 20 seconds to play. So
such a bummer.
I don't know. I've got the 1991 Campus Challenge, but that's an even more strange compilation of games, and I don't know if it'll be the best choice for. I hate the term casual, but I kind of did want it to be a casual tournament. More about playing the games again rather than hardcore competition. So we'll see about next time, but that's one of the games of consideration. Moving on, Game 05, suggested by Jason, is Joust. And I will go ahead and use Jason's last name, Jason Dahmer. This cat, he's one of those guys that has done lots and lots of things, various hobbies, and when he gets into a hobby, he dives in head first and really, drowns in whatever particular hobby he's in. A little story about him. He's a friend of my wife's, and he wanted to be in the Guinness Book of World Records one year. So he decides that he's going to create a new record and establish the record and get himself in the book. So he looks over all the skills that he thinks he has, and the one thing he comes up with is that he can remove bras with one hand. So he established the world record in one-handed bra removal and got himself on the Tonight Show, for Christ's sake. And Madonna was on the same show, and he was poking fun at her, and she was being a bitch. But this is the type of guy. And another thing he did was him and his friends dressed up as Elvis and bought a pink Cadillac or hearse or something, and drove down to Graceland dressed as Elvis in a pink hearse, and made a documentary about it. I mean, it's ridiculous that this guy does. But anyway, not a big gamer these days, but he jumped into it head first. He suggested Joust because he played that back in the day, and he didn't really care if he played any of the other games that well, but he was bound and determined to win at Joust, and damn it, he did. He got a score 99,200. Guess I should say we used the Sega Genesis cart or Williams Arcade Classics, and fantastic version of Joust. I was thinking it would be kind of gimped a bit with the sound or the controls or something, but it was pretty much spot on the arcade. I was pleasantly surprised with it. And since we didn't have any other Genesis games in the lineup, that's the reason why I chose this version for Joust. Difficulty 5, bonus 20,000 points, and 5 lives. And nobody really ran away with it. Jason did win with a score 99,200, but that's not, an excessive ringer score by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, you got second place on this one with 79.9.
Yeah, and I fought for that too. I was trying to gun for his score. I wanted to see if I could get over 100,000, and I gave up at the 79. I couldn't get any more. It was a good fit. I mean, it played well.
It worked, and again, no complaints. As Sean, after the tournament was over, he had scored over 100,000 points. He kind of obliterated Jason's score, but this is way after the tournament was over. But like I said, good for Jason. I mean, look him up on IMDb. I mean, he's right there for the Tonight Show as the bra man. I mean, it's crazy cat.
I've got to say this too. I mean, as far as game selections go, after after everyone played their single player games, they did the multiplayer and came back. There was always somebody sitting down on Joust. It was very uncommon throughout the day that there wasn't somebody there playing that. I think it was probably one of the most played ones throughout the day.
For Joust has always been one of those under the radar, not quite a classic games. The floaty controls, I think, really translate well. I mean, it's something that people is like, it's hard to master, but I can just get a little bit better at it. It's one of it really draws you in. We got a game 06 was suggested by my wife. Zombies Ate My Neighbors for the Super NES. Again, this is one of those games that anybody who's good at it can play for hours. There's 40 some levels, I think. So what we did was I found this code XDSJ, and that brought up a series of 3 bonus levels. So my intention with this game was anybody that could pass all 3 of those bonus levels would get a good score. And this is one of those games that everybody can get, 60, 70, 80 points just by finishing the game. So it's a nice, fun little game. I didn't really play in the day. It's one of those I picked up later, but my wife loved it growing up, and I'm glad we got it's more modern style game, but we found a way that everybody, we could get something more modern and stylistic in there, and that everybody could still play it.
It's one of my favorites from that era too. And even just on top of the the gameplay being easy to pick up and fun, I think it also had the best soundtrack of all the games during the day.
Yeah, I think I had that turned up a little bit louder than the rest of them, other than like Tony Hawk, which is coming up. But that was the actual video game soundtrack, not soundtrack for a video game. Game 07, Mario Clash for the Virtual Boy. Like the Vectrex, I wanted a Virtual Boy game. Not a whole lot in the library that's competitive. I chose this one because it had that the original Mario Brothers feel to it. I kept I put a stage cap of stages 1 through 4 plus the bonus chance, so nobody'd have to play Virtual Boy for more than 10 minutes. It was more of a novelty game. I figured, again, like with zombies, that
probably would have been a medical liability if anybody had to play.
Yeah, I would have signed a waiver to play. He signed a waiver to play a Virtual Boy. I set the cap at the first bonus chance, so again, it was one of those. Everybody that got through all the stages would have a decent score. I did get a lot of questions of how to defeat the spiked enemies. They didn't quite get the dynamic of throwing the turtle shell from the foreground to the background. So I ended up answering that question a lot during the day. And how I had the televisions arranged. The only real comfortable way to play the Virtual Boy was on your knees up against, on a table, but there's no comfortable way to play a Virtual Boy. So short of getting a roll of duct tape and wrapping it to everybody's head. I don't know if the Virtual Boy's coming back next year. Maybe in a couple years. There's a couple other games that are competitive, but.
Well, I can't remember who it was, but someone came who said that they had seizures and they were worried about playing it. So.
Oh, really?
I think it.
I didn't remember
I don't
that.
know if I'd be upset that. What's that?
Didn't know that. You didn't have to play all the games either. The lowest 4 of the 16 games. people got eliminated. So if there's a particular problem with something like that, then they wouldn't have to play it.
I think the novelty of it was there this time, and I was glad that it was included, but I don't think anyone's going to miss it next time.
No, yeah, I probably won't have it. I got other novelties. I got 4,000 video games in this freaking room, so there's lots to choose from, and we'll do something else next time. Game 08, suggested by Nate, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater for the Sony PlayStation. We did a single session in the warehouse stage. This is one of those games you can either play it or you can't. I'm in the can't play it category. You're in the barely play it category. There was a two-man race between Nate, who picked it, and Brad. Nate registered a score of 60,699 about halfway through, and Brad was like, screw that noise. I'm going to beat that score, and after several attempts, he finally beat it with a score of 62,983. So those two are pretty much the only two people that got points out of this game. Everybody else was less than half of that total.
I couldn't really play this one at all, but man, it was fun watching those two go at it.
I don't want to cuss too much in this though, but I fucking suck at Tony Hawk. But I love the game. I love the design. I love the music. It screams 90s. It screams PlayStation. It's just, it never clicked for me. I couldn't figure out how to play it. I played it several times, but just the linking of the tricks and all that, I just could never get it. And it's a good thing I picked one, because had I picked two with the manuals, those two would have been getting into the million points while we still have 50, 1,000, ridiculously low points. This was the toughest game on the circuit, I think. But I'm glad it was there. We need a good PlayStation representation, and it served its purpose. And I love Police Truck by the Dead Kennedys, and almost made a trailer of the event using that song. But, I'm glad it was there. And like I said, the scoring system I had, you could have a few stinkers and still get a decent score. And you didn't do well in this game, and you still won the whole damn thing. So anything else on Tony Hawk?
Nah, I think that pretty much sums it all up.
All right. Well, the last of the single-player games, Game 09, this was your choice. It was Bangai for the Dreamcast. Awesome little game. Kind of a Robotron-style game, but since it's mechs, and you fly around with a little mech guy, it doesn't have the tight control of a Robotron where you're on the ground. But, explosions galore. And again, I tried to make this game, we just play stage one, and anybody that got through stage one and got a decent amount of points before the time limit ran out could get a good score, and that's kind of how the scores ended up working. Most people got about the 100,000 point range. Although Seth did find a way to get 166,000. You seem to think that he did that by blowing up the medical boxes coming from the ceiling at one point halfway through the stage.
Yeah, there's like two places where those come down, and when I was watching him after I turned in my second score, I felt pretty comfortable with my second score. I was watching him, and he was getting like 1,000 points apiece on those. I was like, oh, man.
Yeah, because he got 166, and you were second with 118, and I was third with 114. I was thinking I blew everything up that you could possibly blow up and had a good amount of time left to beat the boss.
Well, that's the challenge with those medical boxes is if you blow up the source of where they're coming from, like they stop coming. But if you keep firing on them as they're spawning, then it'll keep dumping them for a while. I
see. Well, nobody loved the game, but we didn't really. Stage one isn't a super exciting stage either, but I thought it was a good choice, and I definitely had to have a Dreamcast game in there. Just that's my. After the Dreamcast, gaming has declined for me personally as a game collector and classic game enthusiast. So I wanted a Dreamcast representation and a representative, and that was a good choice.
When I picked it, I wanted you to be able to have a Dreamcast game in there because I saw there wasn't you had some multi-console ones that you could have picked for the Dreamcast, but I wanted a Dreamcast exclusive.
Yep.
And I wanted an import game in there just because I'm a big import gamer myself, and I thought it'd be easy to pick up, and it's a very Japanese game, and there's a bunch of action going on. It's colorful, but I don't think it was one of the more popular ones by any means. I think I was the only one that really had a blast playing it.
No. Plus, it was at the end of the line, and it was near where I had the multi-game tournament set up, so most people were using the chairs for the multiplayer tournaments from that station from Bangai, but it wasn't, it was probably in the middle of the pack among the game favorites. Tony Hawk was probably the least popular of the 10 games just because it was Nate and Brad playing that, and Bangai didn't get a whole lot of play either. Although some people, the free play mode were playing like the later stages and kind of getting into it a little bit more. But I still like the choice, and any modern game with a good scoring system, that's great for these tournaments. All right, so let's get into the multiplayer tournaments. First was Mario Kart 64. This was chosen by Martha, who was she's not a gamer. Her boyfriend Nate isn't a huge gamer either, but he's the ringer at Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. But, I wanted everybody to play games, and I wanted everybody to choose games that they were good at. And she chose Mario Kart, and I chose Mario Kart 64 because it was basic. I mean, I could have chosen the Wii version or the GameCube version, but they throw in too many more gimmicks for people that aren't hardcore. I mean, the N64 version, I prefer, my Super NES version is my favorite, but I did want a 4-player tournament game, and Mario Kart 64 ended up being that game.
And you're right. Once you get into the Wii versions, they started throwing like the drift charge mechanics in there, and that would have definitely separated the pack too far.
It's like if somebody chose a Smash Brothers, I wouldn't do Smash Brothers because that seems simple, but that's totally not a button mashing game. I mean, if you get a beginner versus somebody who's really good, it's no longer crazy. And I thought that Mario Kart still could produce some crazy results, although this really didn't either. I mean, I wanted a 4-player game, and it turned out okay, but people were complaining about the N64, and rightfully so. It's not one of my favorite systems. And, we played this on an HD set, the 42-inch HD set, and even with a 42-inch HD set, which everybody was sitting about 4 feet away from, they still complain about the size of the view of their little box in the corner. So,
I think the other complaint too that I heard a lot is, people were upset with the random selection for who their driver was, which I can kind of see. I mean, for the folks who got stuck with Bowser or Donkey Kong.
Tough shit. I did random selection to keep the ringers for, if somebody always picks Donkey Kong and runs away with it, then, give them Peach by random choice, and now they gotta, actually drive. The round 1, we used the Calamari Desert stage. That was the stage with the train. I always kind of like that with you having to stop to wait for the train.
And actually, I completely forgot about that, and the train hit me both times. I didn't even learn the second time I still got hit by it.
So the winners of the 4 qualifying races were Steve, Seth, myself, and Sean. And then we raced in Sherbet Land for the final race. With Seth getting first place, Steve second, me third, and Sean fourth. I don't have the bracket in front of me with what characters you're forced to use, but I used a random character selection. And for all these events, I use random character selection because I don't, like I said, I didn't want ringers. Those ringers bug me, even though I was one for a couple games. I wanted this to be just about having fun and being thrown into the deep end rather than, people getting a lot of practice and that sort of thing. Moving on, the second multiplayer game tournament was Super Puzzle Fighter Turbo for the Sega Saturn. This was chosen by Jen, who unfortunately could not have come to the tournament. This was a lot of people's favorite. A lot of people hadn't played this one before, and I think you get an exciting Dr. Mario clone, let's call it that, rather than it's not really a rip-off. It is its own unique game, but it is kind of the Dr. Mario style of matching up colors rather than matching up full lines like on Tetris. Let's see. The winner... Oh, I won that one. And go me. I beat Steve in the finals. Semifinals for Linda, my wife. I'm never good at games. But, she won a couple rounds, got to the semifinals. And you got to the semifinals, Mr. Colorblind there. So I don't want to hear... That's no longer an excuse for you with these types of games.
Yeah, this is by far my least favorite game, just because I can't tell the difference between the yellow and the green, like orbs that come down. And honestly, the fact that I got to semifinals was sheer luck because I got the wild card draw because I lost the first round, got the wild card draw. In the wild card round, the only way I can really play this is to just group yellow and green together and then just shove the orbs down there and hope that it knocks out one of the 2 sets of them. And I ended up with this ridiculous chain right at the very end when I was about to die.
Well, let me explain the wild card. Since there were 14 people in this tournament, you had 7 winners. But to fill in that 8th slot in the second round, I took the highest score among the losers in the first round, and that was Tatton. And in order to get a high score, you have to have some skill. So all this modesty, he's full of shit. Moving on. The next game. This was the surprise favorite. This one blew a lot of people out of the water. WWF Wrestlemania, the arcade game. Again, we use a Sega Saturn. I plan on using the 32X version and the Sega Genesis version, but to avoid me from switching systems, to keep the tournament moving along, we just kept their Saturn out. We did have obnoxious load times, and we had random characters, and there were a couple instances when people chose the wrong character that they were assigned. We had to reset the game, and because of the loading times, it took a good minute, 45 seconds to get all the crap put back together. So that was kind of annoying, but people love this game. This game is basically Mortal Kombat, but in a wrestling setting, and it's your mid to late 90s, it's actually mid 90s WWF roster. So you got no Hulk Hogan. So it's between the eras after Hulk Hogan was gone and before Stone Cold Steve Austin got in. So you got Bret Hart, you got Shawn Michaels, you had Yokozuna.
Doink.
And it is a ridiculous game. When you do a strong punch move, your arm becomes a strange object. Like, one of the characters, your arm becomes a baseball bat. Like if you doink the clown, your hand becomes a hammer. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous. And since really nobody knew any of the moves, it really was a button masher tournament. And because it was, husband and wife team, Sean and Julie, got to the finals and were 1-2 in this tournament. So congrats to them. Awesome game. I almost want to use it again next year, but we'll see. If we have like the one repeat game, that might be the one we pull back out again.
This is definitely one of the quiet favorites. I mean, it was fantastic. It was fun, and Julie destroyed me. Like,
Julie beat you, and you lost in the first round. So
she didn't just beat me; she devastated me. I mean, she really, honest to goodness, just took me out. It was crazy.
It's fantastic. The random characters really, made us a complete button masher, and I'm very, very happy with this one. The next tournament was suggested by, he didn't show up. Blades of Steel for the NES. Suggested by somebody who couldn't make it again, another person that couldn't make it. For time considerations, we just had 1 period games. And even with 1 period, that was still almost 7-8 minutes a game. Awesome hockey game. I love the fact that when the loser of fights gets pulled into the penalty box, very arcade style. Short, maybe ice hockey for the Atari 2600 be the only other hockey game I can think of that would be good for one of these tournaments. Let's see, who ended up winning this? Nate ended up winning this, who is my brother, coincidentally, beating me in the finals. But I think the games did, even with the only 1 period, the games probably did go a little too long. It'd been nice probably having 2 consoles set up for this one. Your thoughts on this one?
It was pretty fun. Like, I'm not a huge Blades of Steel fan, and I got taken out pretty early. But I do have to admit, like, from watching everything, the ladies did really good in this one. Like, it seemed like, from most of the multiplayer games, like, it was almost always like, one of the girls got through and made it to the later rounds.
Absolutely, and that's I'm very happy about that. I think the multiplayer games were the meat of the tournament. I mean, the single player games were important, but the actual competition part where you're communicating and talking with other people is during the multiplayer game tournaments. And that's what made the whole event social, as opposed to, a bunch of people just staring at their single TV sets.
True. And luckily none of your couches got flipped over and set on fire when Vancouver lost.
Yeah. Oh, hockey. Martha, by the way, is a huge hockey fan, so we were joking about that the entire time we were playing Blades of Steel. The 5th multiplayer game, Game 0E, I haven't been numbering these throughout, but this one was awesome. I think this one and WWF Wrestlemania were probably the 2 games of the tournament, or the 2 tournaments, I should say. Combat, Atari 2600, suggested by Brad.
This
rocked. I mean, Combat got made, back in the 2600 days, Combat was released with the system in 1977. So by the time the video game boom happened in the early 80s, 82, 81, Combat was old news. Few people played it. You know, it was kind of the joke cartridge, just kind of like Super Mario Brothers was the joke cartridge for the NES around, 1990 or so. Everybody had already played it. It was old news. But for 2 players, you set up the pong shots where you can shoot off the walls and a few obstacles. Wow. Intense, outstanding game, outstanding tournament.
This was the game that, like, of all the multiplayer games, everyone was crowded around the TV, like, watching this. And I think this was the one that made the most noise. Like, people were yelling and screaming. And
yeah.
This was just awesome. Like, this was the best.
Yes, this was it. And with the 2-minute matches, it's perfect. This might be another one that comes back next year, too. And with combat, since there's so many variations, maybe we'll use one of the other mazes with the tank pong. Let's see. The winner of pong with combat was you. A couple people left at this point, and so the finals ended up being a 3-person round robin between you, Brad, and Steve. So everybody played each other, and it was total points that won, and you won. I don't have the points with me. Brad was second, Steve was third. But definitely one of the hits of the night was combat. Believe it or not, good old combat.
Even without the point spread, like Brad, Steven, and I, we were all neck and neck. I mean, that was intense. I don't think that any of those matches ended with any one of us like more than like 1 or 2 points away from each other. Like those were good matches in that last 30.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very, very happy with that one. And the final event 0F, event 16 of the Hexadecathlon, was Pong. I have an original Pong, Atari Pong. But unfortunately with the Atari units, at least the early ones, the ones I have, they're consoles that do not have detachable controllers, and rather than have 2 people intently fighting over one another with a vintage 30-plus-year-old console between them, I opted to use my Magnavox Odyssey 3000 Pong clone.
Good decision.
That unit has detachable controllers, black and white instead of color, and the sound came out of the console instead of the television. So it's not, the most advanced game of Pong, but I think it's actually more like the arcade, because the arcade's black and white, whereas the home version that Atari produced was color. We used the regular tennis, which in retrospect I probably should have used hockey with the 2 paddles instead of the 1 paddle, because we did a test game real quick with the high speed, professional speed I should say, and the professional speed was too much, so we went back to amateur speed, but then used professional angles and professional paddle size, and it was okay, but the speed of the action was kind of slow. I really don't like the slow speed. I should have used hockey with the smaller size goal and the 2 paddles, and with the higher speed, that would have been a more intense game. I think for next time I might go that route. You won Pong, didn't you?
I did, and I still think this was intense because when we got to this point, you had released some of the scores, some of the placings, and it was you and I for the top 2. Like everything for you and I came down to the Pong match.
Right.
So,
we did a round robin again for the finals. It's you, me, and Sean. Like I said, I could have won the whole thing, but I wouldn't have been eligible for the prizes. So Tatton was taking home the prizes anyway. But for bragging rights, I really would have beat Tatton, and I think Sean and I played first in the first final game. And I beat Sean by a single point. I think it was 15-14. And then Tatton and I played in the second final game, and Tatton beat me 15-13. So Tatton played Sean in the final game, and had Sean won that, he still could have won the whole thing. And had he won 15-14, or had he won by more than a couple goals, then he would have had it. But he ended up losing 15-10 or something. What was it? I don't have the bracket in front of me, just the final results. But
I don't remember on that one. As soon as for me, the pinnacle of that night was you and I and the Pong tournament.
Yeah.
Because for everyone else who's listening, it's just doesn't know us. We've known each other for for almost 14 years now, and there's been a lot of fun competitive gaming between the 2 of us, and for the first tournament that you've put on like this, for everything to come down to that one Pong game, that was awesome. Like, to me, like, that was just the cream of the crop. That was the most fun thing ever. It was just great.
I'm glad that I'm glad that Pong was the last game. I like how not to brag, I guess I am bragging, but the multi-game tournaments, I went from the modern stuff and it went down to the old stuff. So, you had Pong and Tank as the last two games. And I think, like I said, I think Pong could have been a little bit better had we used the hockey instead of the tennis, but overall good selection. Not as good as Combat, but still really good. And a good cap to the evening because the games were short and everybody was kind of getting a little tired of playing everything. So it was a good way to finish it all off. I should say the winner of the whole tournament was you, and you got a $60 gift certificate to a local game store, and you got an original painting trophy by artist Amy Dingman of Podcane Studios of Little Mac with his title belt on from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. If you get right before you fight Mike Tyson, they show a newspaper with a picture of Little Mac holding his hands up with his belt around his waist. I got her to make a painting of that colorized with 2011 Hexadecathlon champion, and people love the trophy. I'm really glad I did that, and I got some ideas for next year's trophy.
Yeah, the trophy is really cool. We do have it. It's hung up on the wall now. It's right up here by the computer for inspiration.
Yeah, you need to post a picture on that for the artist because she's that she wants to see that stuff.
And I don't think you could have come up with a better prize for that. I mean, that is just perfect. That worked out great.
Second place was Seth, who won the Mario Kart, and he won Bangai, and he might have won another game there, but he was pretty consistent all throughout the day. He got a $30 gift certificate to the game store, plus Jason Dahmer for when he came over, he gave me a couple of Atari patches. I don't know if they were vintage or modern reproductions, but I kept one patch and I threw the second patch in Seth's envelope for winning second place. And third place was Brad, and he got a $20 gift certificate to Acme Hot Dogs, which is a great hot dog place down the street from where I live. So him and his wife showed up, and they brought their 2-year-old over, and the 2-year-old played upstairs with my 2-year-old. So him and his wife and his kid got dinner out of it, so good for them. I'm glad they came. And his wife's been one of the biggest supporters of the whole tournament the whole time. So I might want to get her to come and help me organize a little bit more next year. But we'll see. Speaking of the wives, we got a segment coming up with interview with my wife Linda and Tatton's wife Becky, and get their perspective on the event. A couple of non-competitive gamers, which their participation was important because had this been a basement full of dudes that sweat and curse and do nothing but compete hard, I think the vibe of the event would be completely different and not as fun. So we'll go ahead and interview them, and we'll come back for a quick exit and see you next segment. Okay, so you guys played last weekend. What'd you think?
It was fun. No, it was really fun. I liked playing all the stuff that I hadn't played before, except for the Virtual Boy.
What'd you hate about it? Just getting on your knees, or did you actually get a headache from it? Or
I kind of got a headache. Yeah, I couldn't focus on anything. My eyes kept wanting to focus in different areas. It was like a huge magic. It was like being inside a magic eye.
I could feel it like as soon as I put my head in the thing. I'm like, this is wrong.
Yeah, but you worked at the game store. Hadn't you ever played one before?
Not for very long. It was one of those like, okay, I need to make sure that both cameras work. So we'll turn it on, all right, and the migraine is beginning. So both cameras work, turn it off, put it in a box, and make it go the fuck away.
We got a suggestion that we do like a girls tournament next time. Like maybe keep them separate, or like maybe do a trophy for like the best placing female. Is that sexist, or is that a good idea, or what do you?
We can have the wives trophy.
Woo!
I think that it shouldn't be a whole separate tournament. I think that everybody just plays all the things as scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
And then, maybe possibly if you want to give a prize to the highest ranking female, then they get a prize. But, it's nice to have the claim, hey, I was the highest ranking female. It doesn't really, it does kind of lend that whole girls aren't good with video games, so
Games are hard.
Math is hard. Let's give them a prize and a pat on the head for ranking 8 out of 13.
Okay, well, it was suggested by Tori, and then like Martha suggested it too, so it wasn't.
I don't
No,
know.
I
saying
know.
get back in the kitchen, get off my gamepad.
But I wouldn't mind. I like the idea of an elective sort of. Okay, would you like to be in tier 1 or tier 2? And it doesn't specifically mean that you're a girl, you're automatically in tier 2. You're in the slow classes. But like tier 1, you're competing for these prizes. You're going up against these people. These are the games you're going to play. Tier 2, you're going up against these people, and you can determine. All right. These are like lower skill set. So we play Pac-Man. Beat slow and one button. Like we play that.
I think we won't do like 2 tiers unless we have like 30 people show up. If it's only like 15, we'll just keep it the way it is and maybe do a separate girls trophy or something. But if there ends up being like 32 people, then we might do 2 tiers or 2 leagues or divisions or whatever it's called.
Well, either that, or you could also do like in the tiering standpoint, like you could just you still do all the same games, and then just do like the tiered starting points. So
he's like in golf.
yeah, exactly.
Right, because, I mean, it is pretty intimidating to walk into a room and know that you're in a tournament against Tatton and Chris and Corey and Steve, and there's no way I was going to make it to the top 5. I mean, it can be, and that's probably why Julie didn't want to play it first, because, she knew that everything was going to, most of these games she hadn't played, and most of these systems she hadn't played on.
That's pretty much your point for pretty much everybody except for the nerd collector types. That's why I wasn't eligible for prize.
Right, but there were a decent enough amount of nerd collector types that you were pretty much guaranteed that unless, some supernatural being came down and put his finger on your head, you weren't going to get in the top 5.
California.
I mean, I live with all these games, and I had only played 3 of them out of 16 before in my life. And yeah, I made it to the end in hockey, but that was pretty much a fluke of who I played in the first couple rounds.
Yay.
Well, it's not, but it's only a fluke to a point. I mean, that's the whole point of random pairings.
Once I figured out how to score against Tori.
But I think there's a difficulty level that are on there, like the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and then with the Zombies Ate My Neighbors. The learning curve on Zombies Ate My Neighbors, not a big deal. But Zombies Ate My Neighbors and Mario Clash both had a very specific way to complete the levels.
Right. Well, I tried
to
have a few games where there was some skill and there were going to be a few ringers. But then there's also games like Mario Clash, like Zombies, like the Nintendo Championship was supposed to be that way, but I kind of destroyed that one. Bangai was supposed to be that way. Where if you just finished the levels that were on there, you would get a good score and get like 70, 80 points.
But if you don't have the time to finish the level, like Zombies Ate My Neighbors, if you're playing through and it's like, okay, I'm dying at these mushrooms over and over again, why? There's like a learning curve on that.
Yeah,
it's less like Pac-Man where you pick up and it's like, okay, you have direction, that you go. And then like Narzod.
Mm-hmm. I think, in general though, I think we were pretty, do you think people were helpful with each other how to do things? I mean, I tried to be, but I couldn't be everywhere at once. I don't know if other people were helpful or not.
I know, I told quite a few people about taking the potion in Zombies and so that you could get the last 2 neighbors and how to use the buttons to change your item and stuff.
Right.
I know I helped quite a few people with that.
I was trying to help people with the Nintendo World Championship card, like not to play Super Mario Brothers like normal, and just like get your coins and get out of it.
I should have been more.
Up. Oh my god, I didn't know the speed up until I'm at the very end of the second run through.
But in the same respect, I think that's why there was so much time for free play was good.
True.
Because you could, if you get a really crappy, maybe you can't even get through the first round of Zombies Ate My Neighbors and can't even really get a good score. But then you can sit there and play it over and over again, and then maybe somebody will walk by and say, pick up that potion right there. Right. Oh!
Right.
And then you can do it. So I think that's why the free play was very helpful. Because I know that happened with me with Bangai, because I was playing, and then all of a sudden you walked by and you were like, if you run out over in your time, you lose points. Because I thought I was racking up the points by getting all the oranges.
So
I didn't even know there was a timer. So, I mean, I played it 4 or 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
And the free play for like Seth turned completely around in the free play.
Yeah.
Because he started, and it's like, the Fortress of Narzod, I got 10 points my first go through. Like, that was
Right.
And I wrote it down. I'm like, 10! Yay!
Same thing with H.E.R.O. I got
125. There were a lot of heroes.
Points, and my high score ended up being a few thousand, like 4,000 or something. I mean, and that was the 3rd time I played it. So
I think maybe next time, instead of just having like what the controls are on the little information sheet, there should also be like a tips and strategies or something. It's like what you're playing for. I mean, the Pac-Man stuff are going to be easy, but
could you sacrifice points for that? Could you go ahead and, all right, so I know what I'm doing in this game, and I'm going to go ahead and sit here and keep trying this, or can you go ahead and sacrifice points and be like, all right, I need a tip card?
I kind of like it.
It should be offered.
Asking other people.
What?
That's a deal with having friends instead of hardcore competitors. That's why I was kind of leery about inviting Seth, because I'm not really a friend with him. I just knew him from Facebook, and he turned out fine. But I was kind of leery at first because I didn't want anybody ultra competitive coming in here and roid raging.
right, and that's one of the things that Steve said that he was so excited about too, was meeting everybody and talking to people, who were into things that he liked.
Yeah.
Like, that was one thing that he really, really liked. And I know he's friended a bunch of people.
Right.
He's
and
cool.
And
yeah.
Jason Dahmer, he's not a game player at all. He played it back in the day, and that's why I came over here, because when he gets headfirst into a new hobby,
right,
he's going to go headfirst into a new hobby, and that's what he did.
Right.
So, favorites? Other than Zombies Ate My Neighbors, because that's what you chose.
I also like Zombies Ate My Neighbors. That was a lot of fun.
Have you played it before?
Yes. My idiot brother had it when we were growing up. But it was nice to be able to play it and actually have, like a goal in it. Instead of just, we started the first level and go through and see how far you can get. This was like, goal-oriented Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Yeah, that game gets kind of boring if you play it for 3 hours straight.
Because it never freaking ends.
Yeah.
But it's fun. It's just, there's only so long that you can play. And
yeah, and I liked it, and the level was a good... The password that we used got us to the
bonus levels.
The bonus, that was a good mix of all of the levels. Because it had the hey-ya guys in the, it was the normal grassy neighborhood, and then the mummies. The only thing I regret is the fact that you had to look at the score, but I don't think anybody had too many problems.
No, I warned it. We had a more problem with that with Joust and Food Fight than because I didn't. When we did the test run Friday night with Corey, he wrote them down diligently, but it was only him and me, so we were kind of we're focused on getting the scores down, whereas everybody else, when playing at the same time, it was kind of hard to get that word out. It ended up being fine, but it's just one of those annoying little quirks that I should have looked out more for, and next time I will.
I would say my least favorite was probably Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
Just because I'm not good at that kind of game to begin with.
If you look at the scores, it's Nate and Brad, and everybody else is way behind them. And I kind of liked it because it was Nate and Brad, and they were pretty competitive with it. And I like the game in general. I like watching my brother play it. He's a ringer at it, but I'm terrible at it. And it's not a game you can pick up and play. You have to really...
Yeah.
You have to practice it a long time to get it to click. And once you get it to click, it's great. And that's why it was so successful for so long.
But I have to say, I liked that it was part of the tournament. I like that it was the wide range of things. So anybody could walk in and, usually most people probably hadn't played more than 2 or 3 of anything.
Right.
So it kind of leveled the playing field a bit. Mm-hmm. Except for the hardcore people, and you guys. And
the way I scored it, the lowest 4 scores were eliminated from your total. So you could stink it up a few times, and it wouldn't really affect you.
10.
But yeah.
But more about favorites though, because I don't want this to be like a bitch session.
No. Trying to think of.
Well, about the multiplayers, did you like Mario Kart? Did you like
Mario Kart? if I were gonna do Mario Kart, I don't know that I'd do the N64 version. I like the GameCube version.
Yeah, I chose the N64 thinking it was more classic and 4 players. I suppose I could have done the game, but that's even more complicated with the 2 drivers and all that happy horseshit.
Well, you've also got the the new drifting mechanism comes in at that point, and once if you don't really know that new drifting mechanism, you can get just completely passed up in it.
Because my favorite Mario Kart's Super NES, but it's only 2 players.
Right.
And frankly, it's a little long.
Well, and can I suggestion just really, really quick? Otherwise, I'm gonna forget.
No, go for it.
Sonic R. And Saturn Bomberman.
Saturn Bomberman. I think if we get like 20 people, that would be freaking incredible to get 2 10-player matches.
Exactly. If you're able to have so many people going at once, it's However,
so you guys
combat, I loved combat.
Yeah.
And I didn't think combat was going to be as cool as it was, but that was like everybody was crowding around watching each other play combat. Like Blades of Steel, it's like okay, we were having fun, but combat was great.
Yeah, and I actually really liked Super Puzzle Fighter once I
Martha
figured
liked that
out
too.
how it was played, and that was part of the problem was whoever I played first, was it Martha?
I don't remember.
We didn't know. I thought it was kind of
Poyu.
I thought it was once you got a number of colors they would disappear. I didn't know that you needed the balls to blow up the color, and but both of us didn't know that.
That was
so we figured it out together, and then I was like, "Oh, this is what happens," and then they said, "Oh, okay," and then we kind of played each other.
That was Jen's suggestion, who didn't show up, by the way. So you can
I gotta say that was one of my least favorites.
No, but I liked it.
Only by a
like
fluke.
That's not a fluke when you win 2 or 3 matches.
No, I got the bye in the first one because I lost my first round, and then I got the
You got the wild card.
and the second one was a fluke, and then I got destroyed in like 40 seconds.
Got a lot of yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing is I liked playing it, and I think it lent itself well to the tournament. But yeah, it was a little disconcerting when you came up the stairs and you were like, you and me and Puzzle Fighter. Like, I knew that I was done. So that was kind of, I liked it, but I didn't like it. Because if somebody's good at it, then I knew I was toast.
Again, that is why I feel we should have the multiple tiers, because I would feel more comfortable with somebody on a lower scale. It's less fun. It's one of those, it's less fun if you know you're going to get spanked. If you know that you have absolutely no chance of winning, like, why compete? Why not just go, okay.
Right. I had fun playing Blades of Steel against the people in the lower rounds, but then, again, when it was you and me in Blades of Steel, I was like, why even play?
When you go up against somebody who's got so much more experience than you, combat, however, it doesn't matter how much experience you have, the tank controls are awful and it's an awkward play. You have to have 2 people, and it could go either way.
Do you guys like Pong, or should I have used the hockey variation instead of the tennis variation?
I liked Pong. I thought Pong was fun.
I liked Pong. I had trouble playing it.
Mm.
We need to figure out the best one. Like, we need to go through the Pongs and figure out which one feels like it's going to be the most solid.
Halfway through, I realized I should have used the hockey, because with the hockey, the goal area is it's more enclosed. You have the 2 paddles, but then the goal area is not the entire side of the screen. It's only like half the screen, the middle.
Yeah, but then
the middle half, so there's more action.
But you'd be
and then we could keep the speed turned up too, which I didn't like that the speed was turned down. That felt a little cheap.
We need to find the right combination of paddle length and speed, because my problem was I was just missing a lot. Like, I was at the bottom of the screen, the ball was coming to the top, and I would overshoot it or undershoot it by literally just a fraction.
Those matches at the end, though, with me and Tatton and me and
but it was
Sean
fun to watch.
and Sean and Tatton, those were pretty intense. Ended up beating me 15-14. And I ended up beating Sean 15-13 or something like that. And
it was
that was pretty intense, because we was a round robin for the finals.
Well, it's nice to end up on.
Yeah, that was
the grandfather of all.
Yeah, I like the way I'll brag a bit, but I like the way I arranged it. Like the single player games were in chronological order, earliest to latest, and then the multiplayer games were newest to oldest. So we ended on Pong, and we'll probably do that next time too.
And I'm glad we didn't throw a fighting game in there. I mean, even if we threw like
Wrestlemania,
but it's a button match. I mean, I think it was a hit.
I think everybody liked Wrestlemania.
Yeah, and that could have gone anyway because it was a button masher. Like, okay, so combos, yeah, but I can mash buttons better than you can.
Well, because I was playing with someone I think who had played before, and the very first move I just button mashed, and I whipped out a baseball bat and hit him upside the head, and they were like, "How'd you do that?"
Redoink.
And the random characters rule helps a lot with that too. You don't get to choose your own character, so
yeah.
If you have a Street Fighter tournament, everybody's going to choose Ken or Ryu. And
but the racing games, it's that level of difficulty. If you go ahead and take somebody who's never played Mario Kart and you hand them Bowser is in the heaviest cart. It is the most difficult.
That's what I got.
He's slow and cumbersome. It's difficult to find a master at Mario Kart who can master Bowser.
And I didn't know about the
items.
The items.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize until probably halfway through or almost to the end of the first lap that I had a little square in the corner that said I had something. And by then I was never near anybody to use. I didn't know what they did.
Right.
So I would use one and shells are rotating around me. Wow, that really helps. Because I was nowhere near anybody to use anything.
You can't make it completely even. People that have never played games are just not going to be good at them. You can't. There's no way to. What you do is you throw in as many obscure things as you can to
But if there's a character that is especially difficult, you can just not choose that character.
Not give that character out.
You can still have it random. Say, okay, every character, you have a random character, except nobody's going to be Bowser.
You keep them all the same class. So you go ahead and you have Mario, Luigi, and Princess Peach. That would same weight class. They should have the same pros and cons, so that nobody is getting the clunker of the group.
Okay, so any suggestions for next year game wise? You said Sonic R already. Anything?
Sonic R I think would be fun, and then I love Saturn Bomberman, and that multiplayer is one of the best games of all time.
Yeah,
Bomberman would be a good
10-player Bomberman would be intense. I would just like to see it one time on the big screen.
And I think it's very doable.
That would require you guys bringing it over though, because I do not own a copy of Saturn Bomberman. Unlike a certain couple I know that own 2 copies. Just saying.
We have a C9 one.
Yeah.
I've
got I think I'm going to do Frog Bog. Anybody ever play Frog Bog?
I like Frog Bog.
Frog is fun
on your television, because that's as dumb as it gets, really, because you can turn it to the mode where you just push the disc to jump across the panel, even auto eat the bugs if you wanted to set that way.
I wouldn't mind mixing up some systems to go ahead and pull out some of the obscure systems and throw in some other ones. I do love the Vectrex, so I don't really care what we play on the Vectrex, but I'd love another Vectrex game.
Yeah.
I'm a Berserk whore, so if we can do Berserk again, I love that game.
I'll have to figure out a way to keep the game short on Berserk, because that can be a marathon game if you're...
It can. That's the thing. You can definitely play that for a long time.
And I'd like another Virtual Boy game, but there's the Galactic Pinball and
we need
Nestor's Funky Bowling.
I think we lucked out with people not having seizures.
Well, and honestly, we could keep the obscurity without having to use the Virtual Boy, and we could pick a Wonder Swan game or something. I mean, I'd like to
those cabinets up there too.
Yes, that'd be a good idea.
That would be. I want to do for the obscurity, because I've got a Q*bert that kicks butt, and it's not a long play.
Yeah.
But it's Q*bert, so you get the representation of having a classic in there. But it plays really well. It's not the obnoxious noise of the Pac-Man. I can't stand the noise on the Pac-Man.
Yeah, well, we did Pac-Man this time, so I'm thinking of a Donkey Kong on the XE. My favorite version of Donkey Kong ever.
Okay.
Maybe Crazy Taxi? 3-minute or 5-minute version of Crazy Taxi. What is it, 5 crazy minutes?
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Crazy Taxi.
Yeah.
if I could remember how to play. That might be another one. That might be another Tony Hawk though, where people get really frustrated. Well, although it's not, it's easy. You don't have to do crazy tricks to get points.
With the 5-minute version, you don't get really any bonuses for dropping off your customers faster. Because in the arcade version, you get extra time, so you could keep playing forever.
Right.
But in the 5-minute version, you just get a few extra dollars.
Right.
So anybody that's, not...
Whereas with Tony Hawk, I was doing some great tricks, but then I'd land and fall on my face and lose all my points. Whereas Crazy Taxi, it doesn't take away your points. You just get to your destination, you get your points. It doesn't matter if you did a crazy drift or not.
And if Tony Hawk comes in that if it gets recommended the next time, then I think we should use it as a multiplayer game and use tag mode. Even though it's it's only 2 players.
That's still too complicated. Even finishing a trick is hard for most people.
Yeah, I couldn't land a trick. I think I got 130 points on when I went through it, and it's like, oh, you can play it again. No.
We're going to have some games that are ringers like that, but I definitely do take into consideration that, not everybody's going to be able to play all the games.
Okay, there is one that I think Tatton and I would be probably the only people that have played it. I've got the new Ghostbusters 2 by HAL Laboratories for the European NES.
That's obscure too, so definitely do that one.
And it plays like Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
And my NES is, I've cut the lockout chips on my NES unit so we can play it on my machine. Gotcha. We don't have to get a chip or anything.
We don't have to
cool.
the FC312.
Right. Mr. Driller, anybody like Mr. Driller?
As long as you don't play Mr. Driller, we should be fine.
Oh, I'm going to play Mr. Driller. But we've determined that both Tatton and I next year are co-organizers, so
that is fine.
Neither of us will be eligible for trophies.
I would go for hostess duties.
Mr. Driller, probably the survival mode. Just one.
Mr. Driller's a good one.
Yeah. Survival mode's aggressive too. Like, I don't think there's going to be any anyone sitting on that for a really long period of time. I mean,
you can point press on the regular mode. That's obnoxious. I can't think of any Coleco games that are like really, really good. Like all the good Coleco games you can find on other platforms. Well, they got Ladybug for the 2600.
Ladybug would be a good Pac-Man alternative.
Yeah.
And it's on a 2600, but if you played it, really?
On a 2600, it's homebrew. It's fantastic.
Oh, see, no, are we gonna do homebrews?
I was almost going to do the Pac-Man homebrew, really, until I decided to do the XEGS one.
Actually, no, if we wanted to do the Berserk, like we've got the Insanity homebrew for the Turbo Duo. Yeah, that would be a pretty good one.
Yeah, and that one, that would be kind of cool.
And then I'd run around all day singing, "My love for you is taking clock berserker."
Well, I don't want to get like all the suggestions from us four. I want to open it up to other people too. But
no, I liked that on the event how you said, "Hey, I'm taking suggestions," and there was some pretty good stuff that was suggested because Steve suggested Food Fight,
and Food Fight
was fun.
And the nice thing this past weekend was not just playing games for the first time, but seeing people who were also playing games for the first time. And really enjoying them. And, everybody had their opinions, and they're like, I'm never going to play Tony Hawk again, because it's balls. But then there were other people that were like, I dig the Tony Hawk. Or, like Steven was really cool to talk to, just because, he was experiencing a lot of things for the first time, but was really enjoying it. It turned out great. It was a lot of fun. And I think next year, and it wasn't like you were scrambling around and trying to figure out how to do things. Like you had this very well put together.
Thank you.
You knew what you were doing. You knew how the scoring was working. Like it was all. I don't have complaints. And if I sit down and I bitch about the games, it's because I suck. So
Yeah, and I liked that the scoring was based on the percentage of the high score that evened things out. Losing the bottom 4 scores that even things out.
10.
I think you done a really good, really good job with that kind of thing. I liked it a lot. I liked the size of it. We could probably do a few more people. I have qualms about it getting bigger, just because if it's a lot bigger,
I think the cap would be 32 people.
I think if it's a lot bigger, I would just be leery of people we don't know, and
that could be
things
dangerous.
happening like Arcade Legacy getting their PS3 stolen. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not cool. And Arcade Legacy probably has insurance for that kind of thing. We don't.
Right. And having the people over, it's, yes, we can trust these people, but you can also have a situation where how much down here isn't, not unacquirable again, but you have many holy grails on your shelf, and you have so much on your shelf. How long is it going to take you before you realize, oh my god, I'm missing, I'm going to throw this out, I'm missing a Game.com game.
Right.
Like, how difficult is it going to be to get it again? You don't care.
Yeah.
But it's also, somebody, at Court last year,
Well,
somebody had Game Boy games lifted, and he had so much out there.
That's what I was kind of worried about Seth, just because I didn't know him coming in, but he turned out great. And I don't think that this would go beyond my friends. And if it ever did, I would make it all common games that we were playing on common systems, and we would do it at like Mad Lab or some public space.
And the other suggestion that I needed to get out there was running the tournaments a little earlier.
Yeah, I think
so
we'll start them right away.
Quite so much downtime. And then
we didn't have the multiplayer systems ready to go. We should have. I mean, but Tatton had to go back to the house to get something. And
right.
That didn't. It started fine. I wish we could have started a little earlier.
And it was fun. Nobody was complaining about. Nobody left because they were bored. Nobody was really complaining about standing around watching something. But
yeah.
I know I got burnt out playing the free play games, and because once I went through a few times, I was just like, all right, I'm done. My thumb hurts from Blades of Steel. I can't play anymore. So, but then waiting to get to the next round in the tournament or have your turn come up in the multiplayers, just became a little tedious for me.
I'm kind of excited for next year, though. I guess everybody else is from the sound of it.
It was a lot of fun.
You've talked to people at work that came here. Did they like it too? Have they said anything about it?
Yes, Steve can't stop talking about it, and Mustafa can't
awesome
talking about it too.
That's awesome.
It was yeah. And Steve, he's like I've been super excited about it ever since. He's like, I didn't realize I was there that long, and I thought, oh my god, I've been here for 10 hours, and I didn't even care. And he was like, you could just
tell him to bring his girlfriend.
Like, you can charge money. Yeah, well, she was working. He's like, people would totally pay to do this, and this, that, and the other. He's like it was awesome. Totally tell me if you're doing it again. And Mustafa, the only reason why he left was because he had to be somewhere. So, and Sean and Julian liked it, and I mean,
it was fun to meet people that I haven't met before, and it wasn't like the competitive, like, I'm trying to knock you out of the tournament, so I'm going to play better than you. Like, It wasn't that situation. It was
right, which is why I think charging would get a little weird,
unless we were chipping in for food.
For food, well, and I think if we did do like maybe like a $5 or $2 whatever, it would pay for the food. It would pay for the gift certificates. It would be like
well, you could split the pot.
Understandable,
But then that's gambling, and then we'd get shut down by Ohio, and then,
exactly.
That
you could put a big sign at skill games and 3 sevens.
Well, we just put a bucket right at the door that says donation.
Yes. Help.
Which I think actually is probably a perfectly good idea. Put up a bucket that says donations. I mean, that's basically what people did.
Yeah, but then
when I was ordering pizza,
donating, carts.
Donate combat carts. We can trade them into Atari Age and get offers.
That would be awesome. Like
you bring 5 Atari carts, we'll let you in the door.
Yeah, exactly. Bring us some combat. It's gonna be rare one of these days.
Well, I think that's a good place to end it. Thank you two ladies for participating in the podcast and the Hexadecathlon and not thinking it's a stupid boy thing. And I hope we were accepting.
Girls rock.
Sorry. You did get the highest women's score.
I did.
You pwned the crap out of me on.
I got 8 out of 13. Woo! I'm better than 4 other people. Wait.
Yeah.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 5.
But
math is
math.
hard. That's what we should do. We should do, what's the math game for the
math one?
Oh, there's
Cryptologic!
Donkey Kong Jr. math.
Oh, we need to do biorhythms.
So we'll see you guys next year.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you to the wives, Linda and Becky. And thanks to my co-host, Tatton, for kicking our asses at Hexadecathlon 2011. And for being a great gamer nerd friend for the past 14 years.
And definitely, thank you for all the hard work that you put into and putting all this together and getting it all set up. I know you worked your butt off to get ready, and you and Linda both. And certainly, if anyone else had done this, I don't know that it would have been as awesome as it did with the way you did. So, congrats. Definitely pat on the back to you.
No, thank you, and thanks for kicking our asses and taking the trophy home. We got some cool shows coming up. In a couple weeks, we've got the Korg show in Columbus, Ohio. We have a table there, which work circumstances might keep me from attending, but I still would like to do a podcast on the event. And one of our kind of a rip-off idea from Retro Gaming Roundup, but you know what? I like top tens and I like conversations about games, like today's was. So I think we're going to have a top 10 Sega Master System podcast. We're going to play 100 or so Sega Master System games in the next week or so, and pick out a top 10, maybe a worst 5, and talk about them. Why not? Master System is one of my favorites from the day. So that's another show coming up. And this is the experiment. I want to thank Tatton for all his hard work of getting all this together. It took several attempts to get the hardware just right. And this isn't going to be the best quality right away. I'm more concerned about content. I'm a content guy. But Tatton is a good technical guy. He's going to get this sounding better and better as we go along. Any final thoughts on your end?
No, I think that pretty much wraps it all up. Fun day, fun night, fun gaming. Just great. Nice good end to the show.
Yeah, and I might have a better theme song, so I don't do absolutely nothing on the technical side. But this is Chris.
This is Tatton, and we will see you later.
Now you're playing with podcast.